Beyond Resilience is a series of curated conversations created by Firelight with the purpose of exploring the challenges, strategies, and experiences of creating and distributing works during a time of crisis.
Nobody's going to give us any power until we ask for it, until we demand it.
The role of storytellers right now is to tell those stories that people are refusing to tell, and to do so in a transparent manner.
It is critical to me that my team, again, reflect the community that we are going to be talking about, or the community that is the subject.
There are so many missing narratives in the Black experience that would do so much to help both the understanding of Black people in our current situation, but also other people who are trying to understand what's going on.
The decision makers need to change. It is not okay that this small group of white folks are the ones who determine which stories matter, which filmmakers matter, and decide and set the terms on which these stories are made. That is literally what has gotten us to the place that we are in.
We're talking about systemic change, not a one-time grant to a couple of organizations. That's what we need.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Resilience. I'm Chloë Walters-Wallace, Manager of Artist Programs at Firelight Media. I'm going to describe where I am. I am sitting in front of a white wall with a black framed painting around it. I'm in a sleeveless dress, wearing some dangly earrings, and I have long black braids on my head. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement to raise awareness of the Indigenous presence and land rights. We all have a responsibility to consider what it means to acknowledge the history and legacy of colonialism. I am on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape people in New York City. We encourage you to make land acknowledgements in the chat. Our chat moderator will drop a link to a resource regarding land acknowledgement. I'm especially grateful and want to thank the team at Firelight Media who put this event together, including Nicole Doctor, Felicia Chanko, and Justin Sherwood. Thank you to Open Society Foundations for your support of Beyond Resilience. And this project is supported in part by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and the New York City Council and National Endowment for the Arts. And also, thank you to the Firelight family, our Firelighters, the generous group of individual donors whose support provides vital funds for Firelight Media and our family of filmmakers. If you're interested in becoming a Firelighter, please use the link in the chat to make a tax-deductible donation. And finally, thank you to Rivka for your brilliant captioning services. To access the captioning on a desktop computer, click the CC button in the Zoom window and captions will appear. If you're on a mobile device, click on More on the Zoom window or the three dots and find the captioning feature in the pop-up menu. So, a little bit about Firelight Media and Hindsight. Firelight Media is a premier destination for nonfiction cinema by and about communities of color. Firelight produces documentary films, supports emerging filmmakers of color, and cultivates audiences for their work. Firelight's programs include the Documentary Lab, our flagship program, an 18-month fellowship that supports emerging filmmakers of color, and the Groundwork Regional Lab, which supports filmmakers in the American South, Midwest, and U.S. territories. We also have the William Greaves Fund, which provides support for new projects by mid-career BIPOC filmmakers. Firelight also produces short films, including our new series, Hindsight, which examines the lived experiences of BIPOC communities in the American South and in Puerto Rico during the unprecedented events of 2020. Hindsight is presented in partnership with Real South, the Center for Asian American Media, the World Channel, and support from amazing PBS station partners, including PBS North Carolina, among others. Hindsight had its digital premiere today. All episodes are available to stream right now via Real South and the PBS app. And the first episode in the series, which you'll see today, Now Let Us Sing, is available to stream via the World Channel's YouTube. Our moderator will share these links in the chat. So, getting to the matter at hand, to begin today's program, we're really proud to present the digital premiere of Now Let Us Sing, a documentary short film by Dilsey Davis. In Now Let Us Sing, an interfaith, interracial choir in Durham, North Carolina, is forced to take a new direction during the COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the choir, which is dedicated to racial unity, must grapple with the dual crises of the coronavirus pandemic and the police killings of African Americans, all while trying to sing as one unit while living miles apart. The film is about 15 minutes long. We're about to do the screening, and following that, we'll be joined by Dilsey, her mentor on this film, assigned by Firelight, filmmaker John Valadez, and two special guests featured in the film, Cara Williams Madlala and Dr. Charles Bullock. So stick around for that discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Dilsey, congratulations on this premiere once again. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. Every time I see that little girl at the end, my heart swells 4 sizes time bigger. Great. So we're gonna jump into the Q&A portion of the evening. And I'll start off with a question for Dilsey, Charles, and Cara. Can you tell us, you kind of allude to it in the film, but can you tell us a little bit about how One Human Family began? Was there an inciting incident, or what was the story?
I'll start. I would say that I think there were a lot of building blocks to creating One Human Family. I'd start off with just learning about the Baha'i faith and then this concept of the oneness of humanity. And it just blew my mind away to think about people from all backgrounds and religions just coming together and just what a model that could be after all the experiences as I had growing up. And then secondly, just going to the Czech Republic. When I was a junior at Duke, then I got to go sing gospel and spirituals in the Czech Republic, and nobody spoke English, but the power of the gospels and the spirituals and the way that I saw it impacting everyone's hearts, it blew me away because they didn't come from the African American culture, and that's where I'd seen people really appreciating it. But to see how it was transforming and connecting to people's hearts in a different country and a different language, like really struck me. And then the third thing that I would say was the inciting incident, besides in the preparation, also meeting Cara and Eric, and we'd started singing together already. But the thing that really, I guess, pushed me beyond was just having experiencing getting stopped by the police in Wilmington, North Carolina. I went back there after I finished undergrad, and just the constant getting stopped all the time by the police, and just, whether if I was with my boyfriend in particular, who was African-American, we'd get stopped all the time. And then I would get stopped. And it wasn't just a coincidence. It was, why are you here? And it made, as I mentioned in there, that I used to get angry, and I was like, I got to do something. I got to do something about this. What can I do? And so, it was just like learning about, like, we have to create another model. We have to figure it out. Music can connect, and we have to have these conversations. And so, again, we had been singing. Eric had been doing music. Charles we had been in a choir, a small group together. And so we knew all these different people. And I just called Cara, and I was like, hey, and I told Eric, I was like, we need to get together and just tour the South. I just threw it out there. We're going to tour the South and promote race unity. So Cara, you can take it from there. Any thoughts, Cara?
When we call Dilsey Mega Mind because she has these mega ideas. But one thing that I've just learned through knowing her is that, if you stick along for the ride, it might be really, really interesting. So when she said, hey, let's do this, and I was kind of feeling the same way as well, because of just seeing how, in the little things that we were doing with the small groups of people we were singing with, just how it was touching people and changing the energy and spaces that we would be in. So she was like, hey, let's just gather up everybody and go on a tour. The Deep South is where it's most of the issues were. So I was like, well, come on, let's go. You know, it's like, let's do it. We'll figure out how to get it done. Let's build a plane while it's in the air. So we basically started calling folk, and everybody was excited about the possibilities. And we pulled it off. I won't go into a bunch of details about any drama on the trip, but you know, by the end of that tour, we were like, we have something here that people need and they're gravitating to. And it's almost like we got forced into really solidifying what was already happening because of just the energy and the effort that we put out there. So One Human Family kind of birthed itself. Dilsey and Eric and I were there to kind of push it to fruition like midwives.
Charles, would you like to add anything?
Oh,
You're on
muted,
mute.
Charles.
I think they've covered. I just wanted to add one thing. You know, the climate of a country kind of causes creation to evolve, and the climate of the country demanded that kind of assistance that the music and this initiative was bringing to folk all of, you know, wherever they were. And I think that's, you know, that's generally how things work. It's the need of the time, and then there are those who are inspired and they act.
Very well said. I'm going to direct some questions to Dilsey just about your process as the director. So when you first learned about Hindsight, what made you decide to tell the story about One Human Family?
Yeah. So, but a month before I learned about Hindsight, I'd been saying I would really like to tell the story of One Human Family, and just because we'd been around, but then I also felt paralyzed because we couldn't sing together. And so it was like, you know, I just felt like, oh, this is a great story to tell. But we're also in this mid space where we can't really tell the story, or we can't be out in the community. That's really what it was, because with everything that was going on, I was like, oh, I would love for us to be out in community with everything that's happening, and we couldn't. And so when Rachel had told me about Hindsight from North Carolina PBS North Carolina, I had reached out to Nick, and because I felt like this was an interesting story, because it was, you know, part of it was being at the intersection of the pandemic and race and economics, like thinking about something along those lines. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. But I reached out to Nick, and I went ahead and pitched 3 ideas, even though I wanted to do this one, because I was thinking, oh, it doesn't have enough gravitas. You know, it's not one of those like somebody's dying kind of stories, and I don't know if it would be interesting. And so Nick was really encouraging, and he was like, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It can have a little hope. It's fine. And so I was like, okay, yeah, that's the one that I wanted to do. And so it was just kind of like, you know, being confirmed in that after having that conversation. So.
And then you became a central figure in the film, which is great, and also a journey, as I know. So did you do that out of necessity, or what was your decision to include yourself?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And you can ask John Valadez, my mentor, that was the last thing that I wanted to do. It really kind of came out of having a conversation. I think Chloe, I think you might have been on that call, and it was PBS North Carolina and CAAM and Real South, and I just started sharing my story. And then Justine said, you have to tell your story. And I was like, no, like, not really. And so I know John, I was talking to John, I was like, oh, they think I should be in the story. And I've already kind of picked some people. I just got to choose between them. And I think part of that just kind of came out from me, is just that I was at a really fragile place myself with everything that was going on with the pandemic, that I didn't really want to share. I was like keeping my filmmaker self and my human self separate. And so I didn't want to have to then turn the camera back on to me, because I also don't like for other people to see that vulnerability. And so I really struggled with it. And John's like, you know, he was really encouraging. And then Colby, who's my producer, he said, and I was like, and how am I going to interview myself? You know? And so he was like, I'm going to interview you. I make some notes. And so I wrote out some stuff, and he was like, I'm going to interview you. And so once I watched the footage, then I was able to separate it and see the character. And then I really was like, oh, I have to be a part of the story. And so, and then, like I said, I kept getting encouragement from John. John will tell you, I had a lot of roller coaster emotional things, but I knew at some point I realized that it had to be, that my story was a part of this bigger story. So.
Speaking of John, and we're going to get to him next, what was the process like working with John as a mentor and just mentorship in general for the film?
You know, John is a gentle giant. He, you know, it was really challenging trying to, one, make a film in the pandemic. It was really hard. And then to try to tell this story and then to be a part of it. And then, you know, of a story with so many things going on. I think it was like the hardest thing to do was to try to juggle life during the pandemic and to tell the story. And you know, and the calmness, John, that you would always have when I would be, you know, and it's like, okay, it's going to be okay, you know, but you know, I think it's just the constant support. And then, you know, just as we were trying to change the structure around and just, you know, I think it was just also just having someone to just come at it with a different lens, you know, and so I just really appreciated it, you know, particularly in this time and it was my first time really actually having a formal mentor. Like there were people that I have called on and have helped me, but John was the first time I had a mentor, and I could see why he teaches students, you know, because he's really good at doing that. So.
John, thank you for joining us. As you see, you are well loved by our entire team at Dilsey, of course. Can you tell us what drew you to joining the Hindsight series and particularly to Dilsey's project?
Well, you know, first I want to say, you know, Firelight is, you know, a magnificent gift. So, you know, anything that Firelight does, I'm always 100% in. But the first thing that really caught my eye, or should I say my ear, about this project is that it was to be about music. And that really like grabbed my heart just like right away. And I didn't know about all the other stuff, One Human Family, you know, I didn't know anything else, but that really caught my attention. And I think that, you know, given Dilsey's, you know, background and her musicality, I just kind of had a feeling just right off the bat that there was going to be something really nice here. And of course, when I heard the music for the first time, I was like, whoa, okay, this is something. There's going to be, there's some magic in here. You know, you can feel it. It's like visceral. So yeah, the music, that was really kind of like the first thing that caught my attention.
And where was Dilsey at in her process when you first came on as a mentor?
Oh boy, I think if I remember correctly, Dilsey, the concept was that you guys were going to do a particular piece of music and write and rehearse it all online and then have a finished product at the end. I think this was this concept, which seemed totally solid, you know, to me. Of course, then comes in all of the technical problems of being online, and, you know, Cara, you know, we heard that in the film, and so for me, I guess the first big challenge was who's going to be the storyteller. Right. And, you know, and you had a couple of people, you know, and it just felt to me like you were hiding from the inevitable. Like, and then when I heard that Chloe and others at Firelight were thinking the same thing, I was like, yeah, no, that's totally right. You know, it's, you know, you're a musician, you're a magnificent instigator of art, but there's something else that quickly came to the fore, and that is that my initial thought that this was about music was actually wrong. It isn't about music. Music is a vehicle for how we affirm our place in the world in a beautiful way that's forward-leaning and embracing. And in a time when it seems like the world is dying and it ain't hardly been born, right? Here comes along, a group of people who are living the dream, living the life, and showing us through art the possibilities that we can have as a community. And oh my God, that you nailed that. And that's what makes this film beautiful and special. And I just feel lucky to be, to be a part of it and all of that. So, I'm thankful to all of you for letting me be a part of this.
Incredible. Thank you, John.
That
Very
was so
well.
beautifully said.
Absolutely. John, I have one more question for you because you are a mentor, but you are also a filmmaker. So I can, Dilsey, we are feeling the love as well. Because you are a mentor and also a filmmaker, I'd love to hear more about what your filmmaking experience has been like during the pandemic and how that experience is able to be shared with Dilsey as you move forward.
Well, I think all of us kind of understand that as filmmakers and artists, no matter what happens in the world, come pandemic, come hell or high water, we have to continue the work. I mean, we know that. And it kind of doesn't matter what happens. We gotta keep pushing forward. So I've just been pushing forward on my project. It's an hour-long film, primetime national broadcast on public television on November 16th. It's called American Exile. It's about two brothers who volunteered and fought in Vietnam. And now 50 years later, they're being deported. And not just them, but thousands of other folks who have completed their time in the United States Armed Forces are then kicked out of the country and exiled, banished, deported after they complete their service. Many of them combat veterans, many of them disabled, and many of them highly decorated, as is the case with the two subjects of this film. But what they embark upon is they decide that that they need to change that they need to do what they did when they were in Vietnam, which is leave no soldier behind, right? There's a sacred bond, semper fi, always faithful. That's what that means. And so they become unlikely activists to try to change that. And you know what? They do. They do. And so like this film, I think it's been imbued with a sense of hope and a sense of renewal. And gosh darn it, I just feel like that's what we need. So anyway.
Thank you, John. And we're very excited to see that. We've dropped some information about it in the chat, so please check it out. I'm going to move towards Cara and Charles to talk about your work and your experience of being in the film. So for both of you, what was your initial reaction when Dilsey approached you with this idea about a film on one human family?
Whenever Dilsey has a project that she wants to do, my first reaction is, oh Lord, what did I just sign up for? Because whatever it is that she's doing, I'm certainly going to help her with it. When she told me that she was thinking about doing it with the choir, I think we probably both suffer from this thing where we want to be in the background. We don't want to be highlighted. We don't want the attention to be on us. There's so much work to do, and we're constantly trying to bring things out in other people. So to contemplate having a camera pointed back at you was a little emotionally challenging, especially in the weight of everything else that was already going on. But just in discussing it with her and talking about, we know the importance of what we do. We've always known that. And this being a timely idea, because we really knew that we had something that we wanted to share with people. So that quickly turned from, oh Lord, to, all right, let's do it. Just like that first tour. And, you know, whatever it is that's needed, I'm in. Both feet in the deep end of the pool. Let's go.
I also I feel like it was an evolving task, you know, that came from the idea, and I think John mentioned the song, and then gradually to the other pieces, and the mechanics of doing that under the circumstances that we've been under for the past year always made it a bit more challenging. But you know, if the idea is correct, you know, if it's about helping the conditions in the world, and that's what it was, then, you know, then I'm all for it. We just charged fully ahead, because the universe itself is there to support anything that's going to make it better. So there are forces there to help with that. And so, you know, we didn't have any doubt. You have to work out the mechanics, but the idea was good. And so it would be what it was meant to be. And it was a beautiful piece.
And John and Charles, it was really your idea to go to the farm. I think that you're the one that put that out there for us to get together in person.
Speaking of that, I'd love to know what that felt like. You know, Cara, in the film, we see how the separation is kind of breaking communication down, but then there's also these very deep moments of connection. But then to be in person all together, Cara and Charles, if you want to talk about what that was like, and then Dilsey, please feel free to chime in.
Well, I know for me, you know, having to have rehearsal on Zoom, you do get to see everybody's face a lot closer, you know, like you're really tuned into each person's face. But there is nothing like the energy of being in one space together. I mean, it's nothing like it. You know, your energy affects and infects the people that are around you. And, you know, because we're doing music that's positive and we're trying to create a positive space and we're talking about things and working through things, that energy just builds when you're together. And so you begin to miss it. And then it's weeks and then it's months and you don't even realize how depressed you're getting, even though you're still gathering. It's just not the same. So when we, you know, started getting out of the cars and arriving at the farm, and, you know, and people's like, you're adding happiness on top of happiness, and, you know, you can't really do as much hugging as you want to do, but the energy is just like feeling, just like people just like are bursting, just like, I'm just so excited to see you. I can't touch you, but you're there. I mean, it was even if we hadn't sung a note that first time we got together, it would have been worth the drive to me.
Absolutely. And also the couple that own the farm are part of the choir. And they are just they're so community oriented and inclusive. They live in a small rural town. And in this town, I mean, I don't know what the racial mixture is, but the things they do with their community, they're always including people. Their home is a place where people come together. And so the choir members, it's not just a group who come and sing together a couple of months or practice together. People have really become close, you know, really become close. And so when you're not with your family, then it hurts. And so to have the opportunity to do that in a beautiful setting, there's a lovely lake there and it's all outdoors. It's just beautiful, the right atmosphere to be in for this kind of setting, this kind of gathering.
And then, Dilsey, did you want to say something? Okay, all right. Charles, can you tell us what is One Human Family up to now? Where can we see you all next? What are you working on?
Well, I just want to say one other thing prior to that. You know, the core of the existence of One Human Family is that we're a family. That you have all these millions of people on the earth, but that true essence is that we're a family. And so that whole idea of what a family is has become polluted, you know, with all kinds of them and theirs and the others, all of that. But our reality is that we're a family. So all of the energy, all of the directions that the choir, the things that the choir is doing, and it's not just the choir itself, but there are also workshops that are going on. There's training for adults as well as young people. It's designed to help us to get rid of the stuff that's polluted being a family. You know, that's what it does. And you have to be in a space to do that. You have to be in a physical space to do that. And we've learned that we can also do it on Zoom now, apparently. That's the, you know, but we have to, that's the goal, you know, to get rid of the stuff. So we know that our reality is that we're a family. So we had planned earlier this year to have a race unity conference in the, you know, in the Durham area. We had to postpone that, but now it's been rescheduled for October. And our goal, you know, starting in 2021, of course, it's dependent upon the conditions in our country, is to get back out on the road and do the kinds of things that we've been talking about, you know, to have the musical presentations that can uplift the spirit. You know, there's this beautiful quotation in the Firelight that said that music is the ladder for the soul. You know, so you have the music to get us to become in tune with our inner self. And then that can help go through all this stuff that we have in our head and work on that. And then hopefully, all of us are one human family. And so we want to just continue to do that next year. Hopefully conditions in the country will be better. And that's our objective, to keep doing that.
Thank you so much, Charles. I want to give the folks in the audience a question to ask you all questions as well. So I'm going to start off with Nick Price, who is our partner on Real South. And he's asked this of Dilsey, but would love to hear from Cara and Charles. A lot of stories about faith communities in 2020 that persist today are about being denied access. But the strength of the film and other powerful stories are about the ingenuity. Where does the ingenuity come from in One Human Family? Is it from purpose or something more? Nick always comes with the very deep questions, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I think it comes from purpose. I mean, it's a reality. I mean, what we are striving to do is part of our creation. I mean, if we had time to go through all of this, and we don't, we have limited time here, but humanity has always been moving. It's always been advancing. You know, it goes from being, whether it was in a village or a state to nations. And now we're in a global setting. So we have to learn how to live on a small planet in the genuineness of being a human being, brothers and sisters. And the beauty of that, you know, very, very diverse. The diversity is what gives us power and energy, you know, the appreciation of that diversity. And then we have to do all the things that we can to develop the different talents that each person has. And so the choir is, you know, as I think was mentioned early, it's multi-faith. There are people from many different backgrounds. But the common thing that everyone has is that we're a family, and we should figure out how to live that way, how to raise family, have to have a family that way, to have train our children that way, to build institutions based on the fact that we're a family. Because you can't, I mean, the COVID has taught us like never before, you can't say that, okay, the COVID is going to protect me in my country, but you have to fend for yourself. It doesn't work like that. And that's not the way we live. That's not the way nature is. We're all one on this planet. And so all of the objectives and goals that we have are geared toward that. And we have all kinds of people who want that and who feel the same way. And so we embrace them, you know, and love them and welcome them, whether we have a perfect tenor voice or what's a little crackly or whatever. Cara seems to include all of us. We all come in and we work together because it's about what the purpose is all about. And the music always works out.
Thank you, Charles. I'm going to get to the next question. This question says, curious to hear about how, and this is for you, Dilsey, how you worked with the audiovisual challenges of creating during the pandemic and specifically post-production.
Yeah. So I'll start with production first, because Chloe, I had this conversation with you. I'm like, how am I going to do this? It's going to be all this Zoom footage. You know, how are we going to do this? And I remember you sent me some examples of people being able to incorporate it. And then, you know, it's what we are living in right now. So, I mean, it's just part of documenting what's happening. But I think it went through several layers in terms of like cleanup and so forth. So we worked on some of the, well, one, we were gathering a lot of footage, historical footage from OHF, and it was a challenge. I had to kind of find the best of the footage that we could use historically, and then just kind of live with whatever we got from the visuals and the audio. I mean, try to clean it up as much as we can. But we also had, after we did our initial cleanup, then once we passed it on to PBS, then we had Danny Rinaldi who went in and worked his magic on the audio in particular. So hopefully that answers your question. But I'll say what was challenging too is also being remote, working with my editor. I think that was really challenging because I'm used to being in a room and working in the real space and seeing things changing and moving and so forth. And so that to me was really one of the biggest challenges I had in post, not being able to kind of be in the space in real time and working through that. So, but we did it so, with everybody's help. So
and you did it well. Absolutely. From Larissa, moving forward, how do you hope for OHF to gain momentum and spread its message? So that's for all three of you. Cara, do you want to start? We haven't heard from you in a little bit.
You know, right now, especially since we have this opportunity that you guys have afforded us, we are just looking for ways to keep pushing through whatever conditions exist. So we've got this event coming up in October, which we hope will not be hampered by any of the COVID of it all. And we are just going to keep advancing that message. We're going to get back out on the road. We're going to start doing our workshops and doing what we do. Most above all, we're going to keep singing and keep inviting people to join us in what we're doing. You know, like Charles said, we are all one family. And sometimes you like your family and sometimes you don't. But you stick in there with them because that's your family. You know, you work it out. You find a way. You make it happen. And we'll keep inviting people to join us in making it happen so we can keep spreading.
Fantastic. These questions, I think, are a little bit for me, but if there are more questions that are directed to our panelists, please put them in. From Pamela Yates. Hi, Pamela. Why is the series called Hindsight? Wonderful Nick Price from Real South, after a lot of debate of what the title of the series should be. And it seemed absolutely perfect once he brought it up. He came up with the name. The phrase hindsight is 2020, and we really specifically wanted filmmakers to be looking at this year from their community perspective and from their vision of the work. So that's where that comes from. It's really, really perfect and very exciting. And how did we convince PBS to pick up the film? We have really fantastic partners with Real South, who is a PBS strand that focuses on Southern storytelling and Southern storytellers. You should check out their season 6, which is running as well. They have been fantastic partners, as well as CAAM, the Center for Asian American Media, who are a part of the NMA, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of them right now, but they are also amazing partners, really focus on stories for Asian storytellers, Asian American storytellers. And the World Channel, which is also a PBS strand that brings beautiful work from all across the country, centered over at WGBH. And this is where Now Let Us Sing will be on YouTube today for the next at least 6 weeks. So please catch it as soon as possible. The National Multicultural Alliance. It just came to me. I apologize. Are there any more questions?
Chloe, can I just say something? Because, I think it was, Pamela or somebody had said, how did you, get this on public television? The one thing that I think it should also be mentioned is that you get really, really talented filmmakers together who really have something to say, a message that's really important for people to hear. And I think that's the heart and soul of it. This is not another frivolous adjunct of the entertainment industry, although it is enjoyable to watch. This is stuff that that's really deeply meaningful and that has something to say. So.
Thank you, John, once again with the incredible eloquence. The last thing I'll say is that Firelight Media has been working with the public television stations and with PBS over an immense amount of time. Stanley's first films came out on PBS. They are incredible supporters of BIPOC filmmakers and BIPOC communities. And so we just want to thank all of our strands and our partners for doing that work and bringing these stories, I like to say, from the South to a screen near you. So that's the end of our Q&A portion. Thank you so much to our panelists. Charles, did you want to say something? One final thing?
One final thing. This is about changing the country, the world. So don't let this be something you watch, enjoy, and feel. Look up One Human Family. There may be a chapter in your area. You may be in North Carolina. Join in. There's always something for some place for you to use your talents. So by all means, look us up.
Thank you, Charles.
And thank you, Chloe. You're so wonderful. It's just been so warm and embracing. Both of you and John, you guys have we could feel your love around us. It's wonderful. We wish we could see you.
I know when Firelight said, who do you want to have join? I'm just so glad that this wasn't it's just so much fuller when you have people, so many people participating and bring their perspectives to this. So thank you all. Thanks, John and Cara and Charles for participating. And thanks everybody at Firelight and Real South and CAAM and PBS North Carolina for just for being a support for the work that I'm trying to do, or that we're trying to do actually. So.
Thank you so much, Dilsey. Congratulations on your premiere today. Exciting. I just want to give a special thanks to our partners on the Hindsight series, Real South, Center for Asian American Media, and World Channel. Thank you to PBS North Carolina for their support of Now Let Us Sing. They were public television station mentors, and we could not have done this without them. Lastly, thank you to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for their support of Hindsight. All episodes of Hindsight are now available to stream via Real South and the PBS app. They will also be released every Thursday via World Channel on YouTube. I just also want to do a tiny little shout out to Zach Manuel and his film This Body, which is on The Guardian right now as well, which is really exciting. And make sure that you check out all the links in the chat for more information. Thank you so much for joining Beyond Resilience. We hope to see you again next month.